So the DJI Action 3 has actually been out for quite a while now, and I've sort of been following its progress, but I didn't want to buy it straight away just because there was a lot of like not so good reviews on it. There was a lot of problems initially when the product was released, so I didn't buy the product straight away. But actually DJI are actually quite good with firmware updates and coming up with new things in order to fix their cameras. They've released a ton of firmware updates to try and improve all of the complaints that the reviewers had. And now I think they're confident that this is now the well-rounded action camera they set out to make. And so this is the point where I think it's a good time to review it again and see whether it's worth your money now. Full disclosure, DJI did send me this product to review. They haven't told me to say anything positive about it, just to really talk about the new things that they've updated and changed since the original product was released. But the first time they'll be seeing this video is the first time you'll be seeing this video, and all opinions are my own. I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty, what I like, what I don't like. So what's the gist of this product then? Well, I think it's just back to basics action camera. Just trying to create the best action camera they can possibly make with no sort of bells or whistles. But they've added a few things that you won't find in any other action cameras. So the front screen is now a touch screen, which is brand new, and again, it's not in any other action camera. And they've got the little magnetic mounting system at the bottom, which also changes things and is really nice to use. And I'll be getting into that a little bit later. So starting off with the design, again, it's gone back to the regular action camera design, and I actually love this, even compared to the modular design of the Action 2. The Action 2 and that sort of modular design is apparently, I think, still going to run alongside this. But I think this sort of design makes for a much better action camera in general. So let's take a look at the actual camera itself. On the top is just the record button. On the left side, that on-off button is now a quick switch button as well, which I love the quick switch button. You can just set your own modes and just switch between them nice and easily. Now the thing is with the buttons on this, is they don't actually press very well. They don't have that sort of clicky feedback that you would want from a button, especially on an action camera. And in normal use, this doesn't matter too much if you're just walking around and you're just using it to quickly switch between modes. It's a little bit fiddly because you're sort of trying to push it and wondering if you've actually pushed it correctly. But the thing is, if you were like out wearing gloves or something, then you're going to get no feedback from pressing these buttons. So I prefer something a little bit more clicky, if that makes sense. On the front, you've obviously got the lens and the front screen, which again is now touchscreen. And I can't tell you how useful it is when you're filming yourself, just to have a screen that you can then adjust the settings on. So you've got a little swipe to unlock there, and you can just sort of go and change all your different modes. And that front screen, in combination with the quick switch mode and just being able to switch between your different modes, that is really handy for getting the job done, especially if you film yourself quite a lot, which I have been doing while I've been on holiday, which is some of the footage you're about to see. And finally on the bottom is a new magnetic mounting system, which I love and I'll be talking about a little bit later. But right now I just wanted to show you some of the footage that I captured while I've been on holiday for the last weekend. So the shooting modes in this camera are pretty much everything you can want in this day and age. It shoots up to 4K, 120 frames per second. You can do that in 16:9, or you can do it in like a 4:3, sort of more of a square format. If you wanted to crop for socials a bit better. You can also do 2.7K, and then there's 1080p at up to 240 frames per second. But obviously if you're going down to 1080p on a camera like this, the quality isn't going to be near as good as it was in 4K. Don't be fooled by the 4K, because obviously the GoPro does 5.7K. There's not a huge difference here between the quality of the two cameras. The GoPro's 5.7K is lovely, and I love it personally myself. But the 4K on this isn't going to be inferior in any way really. And there's obviously a lot of pro features on this camera too. If you activate the pro mode, you've got your exposures and your white balances, but you've also got D-Cine-like in 10-bit. So if you're filming it up to 4K at 100 frames per second in 16:9, you can get 10-bit. If you're up to 120 frames per second, it's not 10-bit. So bad luck to the American sort of friends over there who have to film in 120 frames per second. But if you're filming up to 100 frames per second, it is 10-bit. And what this does is it gives you a lot more flexibility in color grading. And that is a really nice addition to have if you like to color grade your action camera footage afterwards. Now obviously if you've watched my previous video on the GoPro Hero 10 versus the 11, you'll notice that the 10-bit on that didn't really do too much, and it wasn't really worth activating in my opinion anyway. And on this camera, it's not a huge difference, but if you're using it for pro work, you are going to want to activate it to be able to color grade your footage and try and match your other cameras. Final test with the Action 3 in a different profiles. This one is 4K 25 frames per second with the enhanced image quality on. Am I sharp? Am I in focus? How well is it dealing with the sun in the background if I do that? Let's find out and let's compare it to D-Cine-like. And now we're in the D-Cine-like 10-bit mode. It's hella windy, so I hope this DJI mic which I've got on, which is connected up to the Action 3, is blocking out that wind because I can't hear a word I'm saying. But is this any better than the enhanced image quality mode? Should you use this instead? How well is it handling those highlights? I've got to admit, on the screen, the enhanced image quality looked better in terms of dealing with the highlights than the D-Cine-like. This is 10-bit, so I should be able to bring it back in post. Let's just see what happens. I want to get in because it's freezing. Now, I know these are action cameras, but my use case for cameras like these tends to be more for travel and for personal use and for sort of social media content and things like that when I'm out and about, and less for really intense action purposes. And so when I'm talking and reviewing this camera, that's kind of the perspective that I'm talking about it from. And going on from that, I know it's quite subjective, but one of the things I'm not so keen on about this camera is the fact that there's not actually a lot of focal length choices. So it's obviously an ultra wide lens because it's an action camera, and you do have a couple of focal length choices. So you have ultra wide, then you have wide, and then you have standard, which is like a D-warp. But even the standard mode, which is the most zoomed in mode, is the equivalent of 15mm. So that's still ultra wide, even in terms of if you go to a full frame camera, you know, an ultra wide lens is a 16 to 35. This is a 15mm. And I think that's too wide for those sort of personal use and travel videos. It's great for when you're filming yourself, but if you're turning it around to film something else, it always looks far too far away.
That's right, the camera can't see it because it's such a wide lens.
Miles away.
I do think that should be mentioned on the review.
I just wanted to interrupt this video and say you're watching this and you're not subscribed. So hit the subscribe button down below if you want to see more videos on tech for creatives. And if you're enjoying this video already, then hit the thumbs up button because it really helps with the algorithm. On the GoPro, you have an option for linear mode or narrow mode, which I think is about 24 or 28mm. And I think that really makes a lot of difference to how I'm going to use it for my personal and travel uses. Now they have added recently, if you go down to 2.7K, you can actually get the narrow mode, which is a little bit more zoomed in, but the quality isn't great, so I don't think I'd be using this. So this is that narrow mode that I was talking about, and 2.7K at 25 frames per second. What do you think? Do you think the quality is worth it? Do you think it's worth zooming in that far? Or would you just shoot wider and deal with the sort of wider angle lens? Let me know. So the image quality for a camera of this size is pretty good. I enjoyed the image from it. When it first came out, there was some reviews of it being a bit mushy, a bit noisy. And I think as long as you know how to color grade the D-Cine-like footage well, you can sort of get rid of that noise a little bit, especially in tough sort of dynamic range scenarios. Rocksteady stabilization is obviously great, especially for what I use it for. And there's now even a Rocksteady Plus, which they've added, which helps stabilize even the more demanding of scenes. But for what I use it for, I didn't really notice too much of a difference to Rocksteady Plus. Maybe if you're like doing super crazy action stuff, then you would notice a difference. But for someone like me, I'll just keep it on normal Rocksteady, to be honest. 4K 25 frames per second, regular Rocksteady mode on. Let's see how this does. "4K 25 frames per second with Rocksteady Plus on. Let's see how this does. Low light is always a bit of a problem for action cameras, but I'd say this is pretty much on par with any camera, action camera for low light footage. If you look at it on a big screen, you're obviously going to notice it's a bit mushy, a bit noisy, but if you're just filming stuff for social media or for a small screen or even just for personal use, I wouldn't have really any problem with using this in low light. And one thing I do use my action cameras a lot for is just taking photos when we're out and about. It's a much better selfie camera than, for example, a phone, just because it's got a wider lens so you can get more of that background in. And I do really like that wide angle lens selfie look. So I do end up using these action cameras a lot for selfies. And I do think the photos out of this camera look really good. I do love the ultra wide angle from them. The RAWs are great and you can easily edit them. And there's so much information in them as well, so you can change the colors as much as you want. Now, when the Action 3 first came out, there was a problem with close focusing. So obviously if you wanted to vlog, you couldn't, just because the focus would be set for too far away. So you'd just be out of focus if you were trying to vlog from like this distance, for example. They have actually fixed this now and it works really well for vlogging. I have not much more to say on it. It just works exactly how you'd expect. And to test that close focusing, we have to get real intimate here, just to see, is my face sharp? Can you vlog with this? I've literally got the camera on less than a foot from my face here, so it's probably distorting my face a little bit. We're in enhanced image quality mode. So yeah, is my face a bit sharper than it would have been on the old firmwares? So let's get onto the accessories now and like the ecosystem they've built through this magnetic mount here. Now basically what's on the bottom is two little holes, and what's on the mounting system is two little sort of hooks that go into those holes. So all the magnets are really doing is just helping you get the hooks into the holes. The whole thing's not held by magnets, which just makes a big difference to the stability of it. If it's held by magnets, it's eventually gonna fall off. But these sort of nibs and these hooks that keep it in place are what sort of keeps it really stable. And I honestly don't think that's ever gonna come off there. It feels a little bit wobbly, don't get me wrong, like a tiny bit wobbly, but I honestly don't think it's an issue. And unless you're absolutely throwing this thing around, I don't see that that's gonna come off there. I haven't heard any reports that that's come off there. Now, I really hate the sort of screw mounting system that you get on other action cameras. It's super annoying having to change the screw every time you want to change something you're mounting it to. So the magnet system has been really handy for me. So one of the things I love about it is that you can just get a couple of these little magnet mount things. So this one in particular is a little ball head, and you can just attach the ball head to any selfie stick. So this is an Insta360 invisible stick, which is what I was using while I was on holiday. And then you can sort of take that off there quite easily. And then I've got this clip which attached to my backpack, and I can just snap that back on there. Now obviously because it's magnets, you are going to have to get it the correct way, but once you know your gear well enough, you'll probably find that pretty easy. But then that just clips on there, and when I go back to the selfie stick, all I do is take it off there and clip it onto there. No screwing or messing around with things like that. But if you do have existing selfie sticks or accessories that have the screw mount, it does also come with one of the screw mount adapters, so that you can just attach the screw to it and then attach your action on like that. And again, that's in pretty solid, so that's not really going anywhere. I do love this way of thinking, and honestly, it makes it much easier to use action cameras for traveling and get different kinds of shots for me. I'm not sure how well it will hold up over time, but genuinely I really love this mounting system. So who do I think this camera is for? Well, I think for consumers who are picking a camera like this up, they're going to want simplicity, but as many sort of features as they can get, and that's exactly what this camera offers. It works straight out of the box. It's got every feature you could want from an action camera, and it's really easy and super simple to use. The front touchscreen is obviously great for just turning it around and filming yourself, and if you were to give this to your nan, they'd easily be able to just switch it on and use it, in my opinion. So I think that's really good for anybody who just wants to use it for travel and personal films and family and that kind of thing. But also for pro users, there's a lot of features in here, like the D-Cine-like 10-bit and the Rocksteady, and anyone who does action is really going to like the Rocksteady Plus as well. So I think there's quite a lot of people who this is for. If you're not a fan of the wide angle look though, you're not going to enjoy the fact that there's not a lot of focal length choices in this. Again, the most zoomed in one is the standard D-warp, and that is 15 millimeters. So if you're not a fan of the wide angle lens, then you're not going to enjoy this as much. But the thing is, this product isn't for those kind of people, I guess. They've got the DJI Pocket, which obviously has a bit more of a zoomed in focal length, and is a bit more versatile in that sense. So they've got other options on the market if you don't want that sort of wide angle look from the action camera. Now personally, I found myself with the action cameras from the three main brands. I've got the DJI Action 3, the Insta360 One RS, and the GoPro Hero 11. And there's things I like and dislike about both of them. But look, in my opinion, this is the most simple one out of the lot. If you just want to pick up and play action camera, I think this is the one to go to. And props to DJI for releasing a product which people weren't too keen on, and then keeping releasing firmware updates until it became probably the most well-rounded action camera at this price bracket on the market at the moment.